So I came across a forum thread about me. Funny. Yuck. Not about me, about something I said and how that view might be wrong. So I just want to talk about it and maybe adjust what has been said. It's the concept, the idea of whether. Just a second. It's a question of whether anapanasati is, or whether the breath is a concept. And I mentioned this to a Sri Lankan meditator, and he went and told it to a Sri Lankan monk who was terribly offended by it, and wondered how in the world I could have come up with the idea that the breath is a concept. So I guess it bears some kind of clarification. But not really, I mean, I don't get it. The breath is a concept, just like my hand is a concept, or like the wind is a concept. Right? Wind is a concept. Now, there's reality behind all these things. Like the reality behind my hand depends on how you're sensing it. If I'm sensing my hand when I do this, then that's the air element of the pressure. It's also the the fire element of the heat. It's also the earth element with the solidity of my nails, for example, or the softness of my hands, the skin. Those are the realities behind it, but hand doesn't exist. So the breath is also a concept. The experience, and why it's important to say that is because the breath is often the breath meditation is often about following the breath. And so, breath going in. And so when you think of breath going in, that's conceptual. You're thinking about it. You're thinking about something going in. If instead you focus on the sensation, then it's no longer the breath is the object. The object is now the elements. And so, I mean, it goes back to the Visuddhimagga. It depends what your intention is. If your intention is to attain the jhanas, then you don't want to practice something. You don't want your object to be ultimate reality. It's not that this is a problem. You don't want it to be. So if you're using anapanasati the way the Buddha seems to have taught it, you want the concept. You want to focus on the concept. So I don't see why it's controversial. The question is, if you're practicing anapanasati, is your intention to go into the samatha jhanas or not? Now, some people, of course, have a different idea of the jhanas than what is taught in the Visuddhimagga. But if you're going by the Visuddhimagga, which I do, for the most part, then the anapanasati first is meant to go through the samatha jhanas, which means you don't want to focus on an ultimate reality. That would be antithetical. That wouldn't allow you to enter into the jhanas, which anapanasati does. So you focus on the breath going in. The breath is a concept, in, out, when in fact what's really happening is there's just the experiences. And by focusing on in and out, you're able to avoid the impermanent nature of the sensations and focus on something that's stable, going in and coming out. I mean, in the end, it's a very fine line, but it's an important line, and which side you fall on will determine whether you're practicing samatha or vipassana. So if you instead, and even the Visuddhimagga talks about using anapanasati for vipassana, But it makes it clear that we're dealing with ultimate realities, that we're dealing with the four elements at that point. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just such a fine line, you know, and it depends what you mean by what you're saying. But it comes from Mahasi Sayadaw himself. Mahasi Sayadaw said that he doesn't teach vipassana, or he doesn't teach anapanasati because it's clearly designated in the Visuddhimagga as a samatha meditation. And so if he taught anapanasati, he would be subject to the criticism of teaching samatha meditation, so that's why instead he chooses something that is mentioned as being the four elements, so vayodhatu. It's related to the breath, but it's the physical tension in the stomach, that tension. And so the same thing could be here. If you focus on the heat or the cold here, well, that's the fire element. If you focus on the pressure against your lip, well, that's the air element. And the difference still, the Mahasi Sayadaw doesn't say this, but the difference still is that this is very fine, very refined, compared to this. This is very coarse. People don't like to do this because it's vipassana, because it's impermanent suffering and non-self. A new meditator will hate this. It's not comfortable. It's not pleasant. This is nice. This one you can make subtle, you can make refined. So it becomes stable, controllable, satisfying. If you do this one, you come and complain to the teacher that it's impermanent suffering and non-self. How can I see the truth if it's changing all the time and unsatisfying and I can't control it? How could I possibly see the truth? You know? So they miss the truth. That's all. I mean, I think it is important to distinguish these things. I don't think anyone who practices here is going to get as strong and as clear and as quick a understanding of vipassana, but that's not the point. The point of focusing here or focusing on the in and out is to calm the mind, is to enter into the jhanas, because eventually you fix on one thing, and that's conceptual, and that one thing leads you to the jhanas. You can't do that with this. You can't do that with this Dhamma. You can't do that with an ultimate reality. So it wasn't an insult to say anapanasati deals with concepts. Well, it has to, if it's going to go to the jhanas. If you're talking about a kind of anapanasati that leads to vipassana, or that is the practice of vipassana, well, then it has to be based on the four dhatus, because that's what's real. I don't know. So I probably shouldn't say that the breath is a concept, just because it's, I don't know. But really, it's because the word breath is just very general. It's like saying the body is a concept. The body is a concept. And they say, well, the Buddha said use the body for vipassana. No, but he didn't really. You know, you have to explain, what did the Buddha say? Four dhatus, this is the body. And so you have to understand the four dhatus, and you have to meditate on them directly. If you're not, it's not vipassana. It's not reality. Anyway, whatever. I mean, holding people to their words is not always the best thing. You have to go into detail. What did they say? Otherwise, it's just semantics. Or maybe I should be clearer. Although I've said this many times in videos. If that's not clear, please post questions, and I'm happy to clarify what I just said. I don't want to be controversial. I guess I wanted to answer the question, and it's my answer to the question. Why is anapanasati considered samatha meditation? And that was sort of the answer. Well, from one point of view, the breath is a concept. That's why it doesn't work for vipassana. But if you look at it from another way, breath, you mean... See, it's not. It's really clear, actually. The breath is a concept, absolutely. The sensations are reality. But sensations are not breath. Breath is breath, right? When we say, I breathe in, right? Look at Anapanasati. The Buddha said, I breathe in long, kind of thing. Yeah, I don't want to go there because it could be interpreted either way. I think I'll leave it there. Muddled. Unclear.
About a question regarding the breath, Bhante.
Okay.
When I'm meditating and noting the rising and falling of the stomach, I can often be distracted by the breath. And if I'm not careful, I can find myself saying rising, etc., in regard to physical feelings of the breath entering the body, instead, as it seems to be the strongest sensation. Is this bad practice? Should I stay with the stomach?
No, if you notice it, then you'd say to yourself, feeling. But the point is to see it as a feeling as opposed to the breath. Just as we wouldn't say stomach. The stomach is a valid meditation object, but stomach is a concept. Breath is also a concept. So if you're focusing on the feeling of the breath, then it's a feeling. If you're focusing on this, well, rising itself is a bit unclear, but rising is understood to be this movement, this experience of the tension of the abdomen. So, I mean, words themselves are all concepts, but your object will change. If you say stomach, your object is a concept. Your object is also a concept. If you say rising, your object is not a concept. If you say breath, or even in is a concept. Although, I don't know, because the feeling is a feeling of something coming in. So it could bring you to insight. That's why I'm not entirely sure about this. But breath is a concept. You say breath, for example. But pretty sure that if you say in, out, you're not going to get close enough to reality. But there is an argument that could be made. That there's a feeling involved with it. I just don't think that that's the focus. If you want to make it the focus, then it should be feeling. Say to yourself, feeling. Because actually, the idea of something moving is not really accurate. There's a sensation here, and then maybe there's a sensation here, but you connect the dots and say it's moving in. I think there's that problem. Whereas you should focus on the experience at one point, watch it arise and cease. But it may not be as cut and dried as I sort of made it out to be. Because I also have said that in-breaths and the in and out is problematic, because nothing's going in and nothing's coming out. I mean, it is true. Even though, because if you think of the breath going in, that's just conceptual. You don't actually experience that. You experience the sensations. Anyway, it's just important to know where the line is drawn, to be clear whether you're focusing on the four elements or whether you're focusing on the concept of the thing. What is the object? Not so much what is the word.
Does the air element make itself felt in the abdomen when breathing in, like holding in the breath and feeling pressure in the abdomen? Thank you.
Yeah, air is the four element names are misleading, because air element just means pressure. That's what it means literally. There's no concept of air. It's just a name for it. But the meaning behind the word air element is pressure, directly, completely, absolutely. So the tension is maybe another one. The tension that you feel in the abdomen, the tensing, and then the relaxing. It's also in my hand when I do this. That's tension. That's the air element right there that I feel. When I go like this, the air element releases. So it's still the air element, the releasing as well. The fire element is not fire, it's just temperature. The earth element is not about earth, it's the hardness or the softness. And the water element you can't even directly experience, apparently. And it makes sense because you think of the cohesion in your, say, in your mouth, right? If your tongue, when it sticks to the roof of your mouth, it's actually, you're only feeling the pressure, the tension. Even though there is the cohesion going on, you're not experiencing. You're only experiencing the pressure, the tension. When two sticky things are pulled apart, you're only feeling the pressure, the tension.
So what about when you're actually feeling water? And not saying water that's not hot or cold, but just,
But it would be the hot or cold. If water is the same temperature as your body, you notice how you don't feel it, right?
Well, you'd notice something. I mean,
if you're sitting still in a bathtub, when it reaches your temperature, you don't even feel it until you move and the temperature changes.
And then that's the pressure again?
Well, that's fire, actually, the fire element. And it'll also be the pressure of the water against your skin. There's surface tension on water. Yeah.
Interesting.
The water element is cohesion. That's what that one means. You just don't feel cohesion. Cohesion is just a part of nature. Without cohesion, things wouldn't stick together. That's the idea. It's interesting because it's apparently not something, according to the Abhidhamma, it's not something you experience, but it makes sense. We really do only experience three elements. It's just funny that it's included, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's just considered the fourth aspect. Without it, it's true, things wouldn't stick together. So that's the fourth thing you need to have to explain what we experience. Of course, science has a lot more than four elements, but they're trying to explain a lot more, I think. We're not so concerned with atoms and subatomic particles.
Bhante, as a religion major who is a Buddhist monk, do you feel that your study of other religions is biased, since your worldview is based fundamentally in the Dhamma?
Yeah, I mean, it's one reason why I don't really want to study religion. I'm not taking any religious courses right now because I probably couldn't even take a Buddhism course without feeling very tired all the time. It's very hard to write these papers about stuff. I took Indian Buddhism years ago and was able to write a paper about Mahasi Sayadaw that I really was happy about. Got a really good grade on as well. I don't have that paper anymore. But, so there's that. Probably a Buddhism course would be interesting. Just not enough courses on Buddhism. And yeah, so it's not even religion, not just religion. I'm taking a philosophy course this semester. And it's hard writing papers about stuff that I don't agree with and I'm not interested in. I've had some talks with my TA because I have an hour between one class and his tutorial. So I found myself going to sit with him for an hour, and I do my work, he does his work, but we've started talking. And it's really neat talking because, well, I'm his age, we're the same age, I might even be a little older than him. So we can have an adult conversation. And some interesting talks. He knows a lot more about philosophy than I do, obviously. But I find it difficult because I have a bias, because I can only talk about things in one way. He's very general, and like most philosophers, they don't take a stance. And it's very dangerous in philosophy to take a stance. It's frowned upon as far as I can see. I mean, probably not, they would never admit this. But it's much safer not to take a stance and to say things like all truth is relative and You can't go out on a limb. It's wrong to say that anything is ultimately true, etc., etc. It's much safer to say things like that. Whereas I have definite views on things, and so on. But it's hard. It feels sometimes hard to get my point across without coming across as a religious bias, religious, what do you call it, biased person, being biased by my religion. Sounds like I'm just, you know, engaging in blind faith as opposed to reason. So that's always been an interest of mine, is to find a way, to avoid that, to avoid giving dogmatic statements, because either the Buddha's teaching is the ultimate truth, or we should discard it. And so, if it's the ultimate truth, it should stand up to any argument you put to it, right? Any criticism you put to it, it should be able to stand up to all of them. And so we should be able to look at it objectively. We shouldn't just believe. So I've tried as much as I can to avoid just making statements without backing them up. And so the whole idea of rebirth, this was a very difficult one. I have to think about. You have to address these criticisms. Well, that's just blind belief, right? And so gotten some hot water for trying, not from Buddhists, but from non-Buddhists, for trying to say that the burden of proof is on the person who believes in death. Because you have no proof that this changes. We know that there's experience, it arises and ceases incessantly. So how do you know that ceases in death? Prove it. Give me evidence. And it comes back to whether you believe, that the brain is the creator of the mind, and they don't have solid evidence of that as much as they may claim. So yeah, guess I'm biased. But my classes are full of Christians and they're biased.
But imagine when you're taking a class on Christianity or some non-Buddhist religion. I mean, how tough is that going to be, to devote hours and hours to writing papers about, Christian religious?
Well, I think they're mostly pretty good. I don't think zealotry is looked kindly upon in university. I'm hoping anyway. The bigger problem is when you get a teacher who's Christian, right? Because then they're going to be biased against you. So hopefully I don't get any professors who are also practicing Christians.
I just mean devoting the time to it, to something that,
Well, there are ways. I mean, that's the whole point. The point is to be able to talk about various religions. So it's a question of whether that's important, whether it's proper for Buddhist monks to discuss and debate and pick apart other religions. And some might say yes, some might say it's important to be able to contrast and compare religions. It's mostly about comparative religion. You're not expected to be Christian or even to be interested in, or in the sense of inclined towards. You're just trying to study it as a religion. And as Buddhists, that's interesting. I mean, the Buddha and his disciples would go and ask other religious people about their beliefs. What do you believe? Learning about them. So in theory, it's not wrong.
Hi, Bhante, what is the meaning of the earth element?
Hardness, softness.
And just a little follow-up regarding the question about religious bias. I pose the question not to be accusative, but merely to note that religious studies, although it can carry bias, must in some case assume that all religious beliefs are true in order to understand perspective.
What?
But to note, religious studies, although it can carry bias, must in some sense assume that all religious beliefs are true in order to understand perspective.
I don't understand. Are you saying, it sounds like you're saying that in order to study religion, you have to assume that all religious beliefs are true. I don't understand. In order to understand perspective. It's over my head. Robin, do you understand what she's saying?
I'm not sure. Maybe Brenna can just put another word in there to explain. But I mean, I'm just from my own perspective. I'm thinking if you are biased against a religion, to try to study it and to try to understand the perspective would be extraordinarily difficult. If you've already decided, this religion
Well,
is
you
on the
can
wrong
critique
path.
it. I mean, just because I believe something doesn't mean I can't objectively critique something else, something that I don't believe. I mean, potentially it gives me more leeway to look at it objectively as opposed to someone, I mean, not necessarily, but potentially, than someone who's immersed in it and just follows it blindly. Third parties are always generally better equipped, not always, but generally better equipped to appraise something that they're not involved in. Now, where that doesn't work is when we're enemies, right? So I would be biased against people I love and hate. So you're biased against things that you love, you're biased against things. So if I have a thing against Christianity, then I would have a hard time studying it. If I have a thing against Islam, if I want it to be false, I'd rather my religion be the dominant religion, and so I hope it's false, then I might go looking for problems. But the same, it's just as bad, probably a lot worse, I would say, for someone who is devoted to a religion. That's where the real bias comes in. And I would argue that people who believe their religions to be true have a much harder time objectively studying, because they look for, they set up very weak arguments because they already believe the conclusion, right? And I don't think I think it's more about who you are as a person. Are you capable of objectivity is the real question. Are you capable of stepping outside of your own partialities and seeing things as they are? I mean, ideally, a person who is completely devoted to Buddhism, and the claim would be a person who is completely devoted to Buddhism is able to see all of the religions exactly as they are, and to put them in the proper perspective in regards to reality, not in regards to Buddhism. The claim is that we see reality clearly, and when you do so, then you can really assess any religion, which I think meditation helps to do, absolutely. Even the study of the Buddhist teaching helps to do, because it's so clear and detailed that you can look at a religion like Christianity and say, oh, how cute. They talk about love. Well, that's nice. But, it's simple. I've said, and, it's not very flattering and probably not the kind of thing you want to say on the internet, but religions like Christianity, Judaism, Islam are not nearly as sophisticated as they think they are. You want a sophisticated theistic religion? Look at Hinduism. Hinduism blows those religions out of the water. These three religions have these little books that they follow. I don't know so much about Islam, but I'm pretty sure they don't say anything new or anything really deep. Hinduism blows them out of the water, just as Buddhism does. These are on a completely different level. Of course, I suppose you could say a lot has been written about Christianity that might be deeper, but if you just take the the primary texts in Buddhism, Hinduism, and say Christianity or Judaism, it's no comparison. What does Judaism teach? Not much. It's a big history. What does Christianity teach? Well, believe in Jesus, you go to heaven. There's some stuff about the Beatitudes, blessed are. There's the Psalms, which are, vague. But there's nothing like there is in Buddhism or Hinduism. I only say that giving the idea of how useful Buddhism is for allowing you to giving you perspective on other things, because it's so much more in depth. It's like how a university student can critique or can do an elementary school student's homework very easily. And they can understand an elementary math student, say, a university math professor, and how they can understand quite clearly the elementary students. It's not flattering to these other religions, I suppose, and they're probably not very happy if they hear that. Most likely not very happy. But I only mean to say how useful Buddhism is in that regard, for allowing you to see all these other views. Especially if you've studied Buddhism, studied Hinduism, studied the arguments they had. If you read some of the arguments between Buddhists and Hindus, it sends your mind spinning. How the sort of things these people thought about, far beyond what you find in, I don't know.
But with all, arguments, no matter how well-based they are, do you think anyone ever changes their mind about their own beliefs because someone else has a good argument?
It depends, What you don't want to enter into, as the Buddha said, is an argument where I'm right, you're wrong. What you do want to do is flush out a person's arguments and help them see the errors. Point out to them the errors. Not exactly point out to them, but help them see them. The best way is not to point them out. The best way is to let them come upon them themselves. Do people change? I don't know. I think so. I think they do. I think a Buddhist meditator can have a real high success rate of getting people to convert to their ideas, because it's just so much more profound, beneficial, useful than just blind faith, which is very difficult and stressful. And they would argue, they would disagree with me. They would say, no, it's very pleasant and peaceful. Yeah, it can be very pleasant, but that makes it addictive. It's very difficult at times because your faith is tested. Yeah, well, that's stressful. A Buddhist's faith is never tested. A true, an accomplished Buddhist, their faith is never tested. Why? Because they've seen the truth for themselves. You could show them anything, it wouldn't faze them. They see things as they are. Then you argue, well, maybe a true accomplished Christian. I don't know. I mean, I met this pastor of pastors that I always talk about, and he wavered terribly. I was just questioning him, and I could see him waver, could feel him waver. That's not to say it's just anecdotal, but I mean, it's two different things. Blind faith is not something you can, or faith is not something you can sustain. You have to keep feeding it. Whereas wisdom, when you understand something, when you know something, when you see something, and when you stick with what you've seen, then it's unassailable. You don't have to maintain it, because you're like, well, I saw it, It's not like, did I, is it real? And it's not even, I saw it, it's I see it, because you see it all the time. So Buddhism very much sticks with that, in the sense that we stick with very simple truths for that reason. We don't get into the idea of self, Don't talk about self. Don't cultivate any kind of view of self or free will, determinism. Don't do that, because you can't come up with an answer. The framework doesn't exist in reality to experience it. So it'll always be a view. It'll always be an opinion. Whereas I am seeing, well, seeing is not debatable. Right now there is an experience of seeing. Hearing, there's experience of hearing right there. Oh yeah, another experience of hearing. No question. It's not something to suffer. It's not something you have to have faith in. I believe I just heard something. You don't believe it. You heard something. That's what's special about experience, and why experience has to be the basis of our practice.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Hey, you disagree with me. What's up?
Well, I just, I don't think people are swayed by good arguments.
Oh, that was the question.
Yeah. Well, no, that was just my comment. I don't really think people are swayed by good arguments. Not in the short term, anyway.
No, but I wasn't thinking about arguing. What I've seen is through impression. Because a Buddhist meditator, I didn't mean to say a Buddhist meditator would go and argue with people. The point is that they don't argue. The point is that they're open, that they're honest, that they're natural, and that they lack the stress that a person who has to believe, the tension of these people who have to, proselytize just in order to maintain their own faith. So for the people who are like missionaries, people who go out there and did I tell you about these two women who came up to us and asked us our thoughts on abortion? Did we go over the abortion issue last night?
I don't think you talked about someone who was talking about abortion.
How, they came up and asked us questions. Maybe I didn't give details, but I did talk about it. These two young women came up to us. I was sitting with Katya. No, I was sitting with Stefan and Sarah. Not Stefan, Sarah and Natalie. And came up to us and asked first them, what do you think about abortion? What do you think about, do you know what the laws are regarding abortion in Canada? And they said, I have no idea. And they turned to me and they said, about you? I'm with them, I have no idea. And they said, well, there are no laws in abortion. So there's no limit. You could have, apparently in Canada, you can have an abortion right before you're set to deliver, which is highly disturbing in my mind. Absolutely. I mean, that was meant to shock us, meant to disturb us, and that is disturbing. It's scary to think of. But then I schooled them. Gave them some perspective that as I understood it, that it's not about whether it's right or wrong. It's about sovereignty. Did I talk about this last night?
Yes, you did. Within the last couple of nights, you just didn't say about how people at the university were asking you about it.
Yeah, so the point was, these two people probably very difficult to sway over to Buddhism. But the average Christian, I think, quite easily, because they're not as invested in it. They believe in it, but it's more out of laziness, out of their own lack of introspection, investigation, and questioning than any strong belief. So I think for people like that, you can win them over, at least to get them to think less about God or worry less about God. I would say a lot of the meditators I've taught would have come into the practice with a belief in God. Good question. I wonder if I did. I can't remember. 16 years ago, when I was a Taoist, did I believe in God? Good question. Maybe. I think a lot of people come to the meditation center with beliefs in God and probably leave without them, or leave with them being less important or less interesting.
But it's because of what you experienced, not because someone gave a good argument against God.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's what I meant to say, is that I didn't mean to suggest that it was about argument. I meant but you were saying people change their views? Well, through arguing with them, maybe not, but through helping them to overcome their wrong views, yeah, maybe. I mean, there are ways that don't involve arguing. Impression, example, friendliness, kindness, association. I mean, these people I sit with and out in the cold, when I've been having lunch with them, I mean, I've had an impression on them, I think. Katya was having a breakdown and she said, "You're my favorite person in the world." Well, person, I don't know, being, because she knew I wasn't into the person thing. I said, "I'm neither nor." But they're impressed, by the meditation and by what I'm teaching. So, and I think Katya still believes in God. I don't know. So people like that. What happened today? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it was another question. Go ahead.
Today, a Chinese Vietnamese monk, the abbot of this Chang, let's forget the name, Chang Guak Monastery, I'm probably mispronouncing it, in Toronto, came to visit me. Took him for lunch, treated him out to lunch. Actually, my supporters did. So we went to a vegetarian restaurant on campus that I'd never eaten at, but it was quite good food. And we sat and talked, and it was nice to talk with him. He's got an 80-acre piece of land up north, and I said, "Oh, can you give me one?" 80 acres, can you give me one? And he actually said, we were talking, I was just joking, I had no, but I know he would actually. He said, "Sure." And honestly, I mean, he's that kind of generous that it wasn't anything out of line for me to suggest that. I mean, honestly, he could probably spare an acre if it was something I was into. But it was funny. Like afterwards, he said, "Let me finish this project, and then I'll buy. Maybe I'll buy you a monastery in Hamilton." And because he was saying, we got this 80 acres, and we're going to turn it into a center, but I'm in no hurry. We're just taking it as it goes. And he said, "Once I finish it, I'll buy you." And I said, "Well, I'm in no hurry either." It's a big commitment. But no, he's just a good friend. It's nice to meet with him. I'm surprised actually that he's so keen. Like, he drove here from Toronto to see me, so he must see something in me. A good friend.
That's nice. Is that someone you met through was it like an interfaith council in Toronto that you were working on the Buddha's birthday?
Right. It's probably through that. I mean, there's just a network mainly because of the Vaisakha celebration. We have a network, and so we've met that way. I think I met him, I've seen him, but I really met him at an invitation. He invited all of us to something. Maybe I talked, like I've talked a couple of times. They've got me to get up and speak. And it's actually, it's nice because this is something I haven't done, but I've gotten up and talked about stuff and really surprised myself with how useful, how I have something to say, because it's not anything I've ever been involved in, like these programs that they're setting up at the university for chaplaincy, and I actually have something to say on it, which is nice. So it shows that there's potential in the future to say things about this. Even at that interfaith cafe, I was surprised that I was able to get up and to teach these Christians how to meditate. It's nice to have this impact. Or we had these community advisors, which are like the dons, I guess is the old word. people who look after the residents, the first years, and taught them how to meditate. And being involved and having something to offer. Right, anyway, so that's how I met him. And something else I wanted to say about that. Oh, he offered to have the Taiwanese corporate body. He has connections with the corporate body of the Buddha Education Foundation in Taiwan. They're the people who print up all those books. So he offered to have our book printed up for free and sent here for free. They would send us 1,000 of them, print them up. And I thought afterwards, I said, "Oh yes, please." So he's gonna connect me with them. But I thought afterwards I should ask him, because I'm not really comfortable with what they put in the back. They usually put a dedication to Amitabha or Amitabha Buddha, and a wish for all beings to realize the truth of Amitabha Buddha, which I'm not comfortable with for two reasons. First of all, because it's obviously not my teaching, but second of all, because this book is meant specifically to be non-religious. So I think I'd have to say no if it means they're going to put something in it. Yeah. Just thought I'd mention that because it is kind of neat. They're a very big publisher. It's very easy for them to print stuff. And they are very kind and have a very kind following who pays for incredible amounts of money. They support the printing of many books. Like the Visuddhimagga, I asked for 5 copies of it, thick hardcover copies, and they sent me 5 for free. Just shipped them from across the world. I've done that twice, actually. That's how it should be. Oh, I've argued about that. The whole Visuddhimagga thing, because I got in trouble for it. It's ridiculous, because here we have these people in Taiwan sending them for free and actually doing it illegally, because their copy is illicit, is breaking copyright. Yeah.
How can the Visuddhimagga be copyrighted?
Good question. The translation is copyrighted.
I see.
Life plus 70, I think, is now. So the translator dies, and then you've got whoever owns the copyright has another 70 years where they can own the copyright, which is just absurd.
It is. I think we had one more question. In daily life, I face with difficulties in relationships, jealous mind, and every member of family still hide in their mind. Really, I feel confused with their actions. How can I apply meditation in reality?
I'm clicking on your username. You haven't meditated with us. You should start meditating. Have you meditated? Have you read my booklet on how to meditate? That would be a good start. If you read that, put it into practice, I would say that will help you apply meditation in reality. The booklet, there's a link at the top of this page where it says this booklet. Click on that. That'd be a good start. We had weekly meditation today. Have I told you about the Arboretum, how we're meditating in the Arboretum?
Yes.
Yes. So today we did our weekly scheduled meditation in the Mindfulness Center, this sort of ex-dance studio, I think. And 3 new people came. Yeah. So 3 new people came, and 1, 2, 3, 4 old people came. So it's steady, And plus 3 of them, I think 2 of the new people anyway, said they would come to the Monday, or expressed interest anyway in coming to the Monday. Maybe the Friday. Friday is a little more risky because it's in the middle of student center. So you have to be really audax.
Or you can invite them on Saturday to the monastery.
I said, we've also got the monastery, you can come. I didn't actually mention Saturday. I should have.
Saturday would be good.
People have so little time, you know. Did I tell you this about the setting up the 5-minute? I didn't, I don't think. So clubs, there's a space where everyone in the student center, it's like a hallway. And most traffic comes through this hallway to go to the student center. There's other entrances, but this is the main entrance because it's the closest to all the classes. So it's like a funnel. And so they set up tables on either side, and the clubs have tables. And so you book a table for once a week or whatever. I don't know, once a month maybe. I think you can book once a month. And you promote your club. So I suggested that we book one, but then we take the table aside and set up like a mat, a carpet or something, and put seats down and teach meditation.
Yeah.
And I kind of refined it, and I was thinking what we'll do is we'll put up a sign, 5-minute meditation lesson. I don't know if it's reasonable. I actually haven't tried teaching meditation in 5 minutes, but I bet I can do it. I bet. And that'll attract people, right? Because no one has time. But if you say 5-minute meditation lesson, I bet everyone. I bet you get a lot of people coming to learn meditation in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, even just taking a few deep breaths can just get you started. So to have your instruction in just a minute or two of rising and falling.
So what I'd like to think about is getting a banner that says 5-minute meditation lesson. Maybe McMaster Buddhist, but how do we make banners? What's the best way to do that? Bristol board or no? Maybe how expensive are those like silk screened plasticky cloth things? You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I haven't looked into those. You can look into those.
Probably a bit expensive. But we have to get one eventually for like Clubs Fest in next year. Mm-hmm. We have to have a professional sort of banner because everyone else does. I guess what I was thinking, we have I have a screen. We have this projection screen, and we could just print up paper, right? One sheet of paper, put it up, min ut, yeah, and put the paper on. That'd be simplest.
Yeah. Anthony said they do 5-minute meditation lessons at a group at his university, although it was just on one occasion. So someone else has done that. That's pretty awesome.
I think it would be ideal. I'm going to propose it, or I'm just going to implement it. I figured out how to do it. We have to book online. You can remind me on the 15th is when we're allowed to book for the next month. So if someone can remember to remind me on the 15th, Bante, did you book a table? That'll be interesting.
So we have our campaign ready for our 2 projects.
Yes, important. Go ahead.
Yes, I'll just put it in the meditation chat here. So these are 2 projects that we'll be working on for the next couple of weeks. One being to have Bante's book printed up without any special dedications that conflict with the teachings. They'll be printed up in Sri Lanka for a very reasonable price. But we're asking people to donate towards it. It's great merit to donate towards Buddhist books when they're printed by donation like this. And for any amounts that are received that are over and above the cost of the printing of the book, it will be redonated to a place in Tampa, Florida, the children's home. And the tie-in with that is Bante will be in Florida, in the Tampa, Florida area at the end of December. He'll be teaching a one-day meditation course there, and he'll be visiting family. And so he will be there, and those funds will be brought over to the home for the benefit of the children at the home. It's a residential home for children. So I put the information into chat and meditation, in the meditation chat panel. There's a lot of information there. So I hope our community will support it. It'd be a nice thing to do. A great merit.
Yes, indeed. That's kind of in lieu of Christmas presents. If you're looking for Christmas presents for family and don't want to do something that's not like materialist, join us. We can do something big together.
Yeah.
Giving.
Sorry, I missed one question. How do we discern between earth element and air element? Hardness and pressure could be similar.
Not really. I mean, I wouldn't overthink it. You experience them both. Experience hard, soft. Experience pressure, you experience placidity. You experience heat, you experience cold.
And with that, we are all caught up with questions. And it's 10:17.
Right. Okay, let's quit there then. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks, Robin, for all that you've done.
Thank you, Bhante.
Good night.
Good night.